welcome to the Board Game Barbecue Podcast. It's Mike today hosting, brought to you by Advent Games and our amazing Patreon community. Welcome, everyone. Good to be in the seat tonight. I'm joined by two others. We've got the trader who left Melbourne and headed to Sydney. It's Jules. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Look, there's some things I miss about Melbourne, but I cannot complain about the weather here. It's been gorgeous.
That's the one thing I think Sydney does have going for it. The weather is a bit more stable, I think.
Yeah, I had a nice day in the city today, and it was absolutely lovely.
And someone who's actually had probably a bit of a weather change lately from, I'm guessing, some nice sun to lovely. Actually, no, you're back in Queensland again, so it's not too bad up there. Def, welcome back, Def. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I was about to say, is this a discussion about the weather now? Because I've got plenty to say there. But how is everyone?
Really good.
I forgot that you moved to Brisbane for a while there. I was about to say Def from Melbourne, but no, we're not here no more.
Better than saying Def from Greece.
Was in Greece.
Was.
I'm sure we'll get to that at some point today. Look, let's get into it. Let's talk about some games. Def, I've been watching you post some stuff in our socials and in our little chats about playing some games while you're away. I'd love to hear what you've been playing. What's been happening with you, man?
It's been interesting because I've obviously spent 3 weeks in Greece. I just came back a couple of days ago, and I had my brother who I got hooked into games, and he was very keen to play games, and he had bought games left and center. But I also had an opportunity to introduce other members of my family to board games, and I got some really interesting reactions. For our Patreon supporters that are listening, there's a Patreon exclusive episode that I did with Connor where I talk about this in detail. But the summary goes something like this. I taught my brother Guy a project. We've played it a few times. You with me so far?
Oh, yeah.
Then I teach him Teotihuacan. He goes, it's okay, but it's not as good as Guy project. I go, all right, fair. Then I teach him Great Western Trail. He goes, it's good, but it's not as good as Guy project. And then I teach him on the very last day before I left. We played other games in between, but I'm just focusing on the sort of heavy hitters. I teach him Brass Birmingham. He goes, yeah, I can see it's good, but it's not as good as Guy project. And I go, dude, you got to change your approach here. If your brain gelled with Gaia Project like mine has, you're not going to get that elsewhere. You have to accept there's more games in the universe. So that was really good. We played heaps of games. We tried to beat Dimmy in Pipeline. That didn't go down very well.
I think beating Dimmy in general doesn't go down too well.
Yeah, we actually tried. We combined our scores and we still didn't reach our score. So that was a bit brutal. But I think, Mike, you especially will relate to this. I introduced my sort of extended family, my sister and her husband and even their kids, and my parents were ever hovering above the table looking at what's going on, to games using the crew. And it was fascinating to watch the reactions, guys. Like, I showed them, I explained the rules, which is like a 2-minute thing in the crew, right? And even for a simple game, they just didn't get it. They just went, okay, understand what you do, but how is this a game? Why is this fun? Yeah. And I said, you know what? Let's just play a few rounds, see how you go. And then within a few minutes, you could see everybody having fun and laughing. And the whole thing was just such an eye-opening experience in terms of there's so many people that are still outside of this hobby that don't actually realize how far board games have come. Mm-hmm. The next day, I showed my sister and her husband, again, non-gamers, they've never played a board game in their life, Everdell.
Oh, yeah.
And they struggled for the better part of the first hour, right? They were really struggling. And by the end of the game, they both said, I cannot believe this is what you've been doing. Is this what you do when you say you play board games? Can we get more of this?
That's amazing.
It was quite interesting, and especially from people that you don't expect that to happen, because none of these people have a background in gaming in general, like video game. My brother has been playing video games with me since we were kids, so I expect from him to catch up to the rules and understand games very quickly, which he does. But even people that have zero background in gaming in general, and this is one thing that did come up in discussion with Connor, is we don't appreciate, as board gamers or gamers in general, we don't appreciate the fact that some people don't understand why doing this activity is fun.
Yeah.
We have to explain it, or we have to show it to them, because they're not exposed to it. It's as simple as that. And we have to acknowledge that and appreciate the fact that there's people that don't know it. Like, I wouldn't do painting. Painting a painting is fun activity for me. It's not. I understand why other people find it fun, but I've never been exposed to it. So that's the summary, if that makes sense. It was very
amazing,
interesting.
Def. Like introducing that thing that you love to your family and them coming around to it. Like my favorite thing when teaching somebody new a board game is seeing how it does not hit that expectation they have of it and how it's unknown to them and how it really interests them. But I think there's that extra level of specialness when you show that to your family and they get into it. I got my mum a while ago playing top 10 with us at the table, and it's such a silly game, but watching my mum join in with us and having a laugh and being silly warms my heart so much because they don't expect to have fun with it. And it's just such an amazing experience being able to connect with your loved ones in this new way. I think it's really cool.
Even my dad, who is at an age where he wouldn't be interested in any of this stuff, and he didn't really linger around to see what was going on most of the time. But my brother and his friends were playing a game of Wingspan, which is the only game they've been playing regularly. And I said to him, can you take out this app, Wingsong, which is a mobile app? I don't know if you guys have seen it. And you scan the photo, the card of the bird, and it makes the sound. The song
I've heard of this,
yes,
of the bird.
It's very cool.
My dad, when he was young, in his 30s and 40s, his hobby was bird watching and bird catching and stuff like that, which in Greece is very common. And so he showed him this, and my dad was blown away by the combination of technology and that this is part of a game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really cool,
I think that the more I play more different games and the longer I have been involved in the hobby, I think board gaming is for everyone. They just need to find their game.
Yeah,
100%.
There's a game out there for everybody. And some people, it'll be Gaia Project, and some people, it'll be stuff like Exploding Kittens and Top 10.
Yeah.
And that's totally cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's half the... I think it's not for... There's a game for everyone, but there's also a group for everyone. It totally depends on finding people to play with. My brother had this block of there's nobody to play with. And I said, dude, just reach out to the community. There's a massive board game community in Greece, and you'll find people. He's like, no, I want to play with my friends, with my family. I don't want to play with random folk, which I understand. I do think there's a game for everyone and there's a group for everyone as well. Some of the most fun we had was playing Exploding Kittens, which you just mentioned, Jules, with my girls who can play much more complex games, but that's what they wanted to play at a family setting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have great fun with it.
Yeah, it's been interesting. We played heaps of games. We played Pipeline, Gaia Project, Ultimate Railroads. We played Brass Birmingham. And I think the game that stuck with the non-gamers of the group at the end was Azul.
Yeah.
Because it was quick to grasp. They understood the strategy. They understood what they had to do. They could figure out the hate drafting very quickly. If I take this, Def is going to take 11 negative points. Let's do that.
That's fantastic.
It's been good to spend a bit of time with them that way. And I am quite appreciative of the time I had with them. After all this time, I haven't been back in a long time. I'm grateful I had the time to do that.
I wanted to ask Steph, you playing games with your brother, and I wasn't sure if you got your brother into games. Had you got your brother into games face-to-face previously? Or is this something you got him into virtually and then he picked up actual board games as well?
Yeah, this is something we did virtually. So my brother, like me, had played the basic games years and years ago, like Ticket to Ride and Pandemic. We had played these games together, but that was before I got into the hobby for good. And so a few months ago, I taught him the game that was first, I think, sparked this sort of fire for him was Clans of Caledonia. Because we played that online, and he was like, whoa, can we do that again? And then from there, we've been playing on a regular basis. Both heavy Euros like Gaia Project, which I think at the moment is his favorite, but also some light games like Acropolis has been a massive hit for us.
Acropolis is fantastic.
With our community as well. And we've played a few games of Ultimate Railroads. But
so how long do you give him before he's got 10 18XX games in his collection?
Yeah. He was asking me about that. What's all this 18 stuff that I see? I was like, you're not ready for that, mate.
I'm still not ready for that.
I think you would have a blast playing one of these games.
You reckon?
Oh,
for me, I wasn't sure.
It's the group experience.
Okay.
Yeah, you would have a blast playing something like this. And I think this is a game that everybody would find something to this category of games to enjoy. So that's what's been happening. I think overall, including the online stuff that I've been playing and the games I've been playing home with Timmy before we leave, I think Acropolis has been the standout as a quick, light, family-friendly 2-player, 3-player, 4-player, it doesn't matter, game that plays within 30 minutes, is thinky enough, it's great fun.
Are you playing with all the additional rules?
Sorry, say that again?
Are you playing with all the extra rules, like the extra scoring conditions?
The variants?
Yeah.
They look bonkers, those variants. And
yeah, they are crazy.
The extra ways of scoring, you're not playing with... I only play with those. I don't think I've actually ever played the base game before.
But do you play with one of these, or do you say, we'll play with all of these together at the same time?
Yeah.
Oh, you crazy.
That's the only way I play it.
Okay. I'll try that next time.
Yeah, man, that's fine. It's thinky enough, but still not that. It's not that hard at all, man. That's the only way I've played from day dot.
There you go.
Give it a go. It's fun. It just adds an extra nice layer of, gives me more ideas of how I want to try to score things and place things. And definitely, I'm surprised. I thought you'd be the one smashing all those extra rules.
No, because you see, this is why some of these lighter games, I want them to be the light. I'm still keen to try all of that, but this is what we've been playing with. I've just been doing the base game. It's a great game, and how good is the value for money there? It's $40, which is the cheapest I've ever bought, I think, in Australia, if you take out the crew.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever bought a cheaper game than that.
Yeah.
And the layout in the box is amazing. I'm I've got to open this box and punch it. Oh, wait a second. It's already punched. It's already sorted in its little sections.
Yeah, and the cardboard tokens are quite thick. Yeah. The quality is great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great game. I've played it once, and it's one of those simple selection games. Take one tile and place it in your area. But man, it gets really tight, and it's really annoying when you start running out of those cubes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's a great game. Love it.
I think it's replaced Cascadia for me in terms of the light, quick game. I think it's better than Cascadia, which is surprising, but
there is an expansion coming later this year for Cascadia, so we'll see what happens there.
That'll be interesting. Yeah. Okay.
What have you guys been playing?
Yeah, Jules, let us know. What have you been playing, man?
Sure. I've tried a fair chunk of new games, actually, this week. I'll talk about all things that are new for me this week. I'll mention Arboretum, which has been around a long time. I just hadn't played it until this past week.
That's one about trees.
Yes.
How good is Arboretum? It takes the trick-taking and just flips it on its head, and you go, hang on, what? How do you score again?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? That
it is.
You're making these... You can build out the cards any way you want. So the aim of Arboretum is there's different color sets of trees, and you want to try and lay them out in number order as much as you can in order to score big runs. But you can build the network any way you want. And of course, the bigger you make them and the more points you get. However, there's a couple of wrinkles that really change up the game. Is when the deck of cards runs out that you're drawing from each turn, and because you must draw 2 and place 1 and discard 1. That's the order of your turn. At the end of the game, you look at your different colored rows of trees that you've all laid out, and you only score runs that start and end with the same tree. So I'll lay out an example. Let's say I have a purple 2, and then that's next to a white 3 and then a white 4, and then I've got a purple 5. So they're in number order, but I just count the the purple start and end number, and I'm allowed to score it that way. So it's abstract scoring. It's a little bit tricky to explain the first time, but that's generally how it works. And you get bonus points if you start and end your line with a 1 and an 8. And if you have 4 of the same color right next to each other, you get bonus points on top of that. So the wrinkle of the game is when you go to do your scoring for that type, only the players that have the highest value card of that color at the end of the game left in their hand are allowed to score it.
Oh.
However, if that player is holding an 8 and another player is holding a 1, the 1 negates the 8, and then you have to look at the next highest card left in someone's hand. So you want to put out these cards and make them as long as possible, but you need to hold on to a color card so you're eligible to score and hope it's the highest one. And as you're going through the game, because you keep discarding cards every turn and you form one discard pile for each player, you start to lose track of who's played, what's been discarded, and it just gets like really tense towards the end. You go, oh no, I think they're holding on to the 1. I've held the 8. This is not good. But I can't play it because I need to hold a color to score it, but they're going to probably negate it. Yeah, it's a very mean cutthroat game, but Arboretum was great fun. Really enjoyed it.
Cool. That sounds good. I didn't even know it was a trick-taking game.
It's
a very unique. The scoring is very unique. I haven't seen it elsewhere, and I think the first time we played it, we didn't really understand, I think, what the purpose of it was. But as you play the game a couple more times, you start to see, okay, so this is almost like a balancing act between playing the cards you need to form these paths and keeping cards in your hands to be able to actually score.
Yes.
And it's very tricky. Like, it's legit difficult game to score well because there's, especially with 4 players.
Yeah, you get to a point where there's the most agonizing decisions because you're trying to hold cards back from other players because they're scoring those numbers, but also holding your own numbers because you need them to score. And you're like, what do I get rid of? There's agonizing decisions. It's brilliant. And you can also do plays like discarding a card just to bait people into taking that and going, hey, I'm going to hold back this card though. They don't know they'll never be able to score this. Because if you hold the 8 and the 1 then of a color, then you block someone from scoring. There's no way they can do it. And I did that with 2 of the colors in the game I played. It didn't get me the win, but it was fun nonetheless. The other one I'll mention that I played this past week that's new is a game that we published by Pandasaurus Games. It hasn't come out yet, so I've got an early copy I've had access to. It's called After Us.
Oh, is that the one with the monkeys and the...
Yes,
it is.
Oh,
hang on. I'm interested in this. I saw a playthrough and I thought it was pretty clever.
Yeah.
With the matching symbols in the cards.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay. Tainted Grail style.
Yeah, there you go. I didn't know about that. But After Us is a deck building game. Classic deck building in that everyone starts with the same starting monkeys. You get some tamarins, and their abilities are pretty rubbish. And what you're doing in this game is you're trying to race to 80 points. It's first person to get 80. You finish the phase that you're in. You don't actually finish out a full round. You'll finish the phase and then see who has the highest score. Because you can surpass 80, but 80 is the trigger to immediately finish after that phase is done. Basically what you're doing is you draw 4 cards from your hand and you lay them out and you're making a line of cards, and there's all these symbols that you're trying to put together to form a frame, and you get to activate things that are in a closed frame. So if it's half open on the edge of a card and doesn't have another half to close it, you don't get to do anything. And basically, on every card, once you put all of them together, it forms 3 rows. So what you'll do is you'll activate each frame. You'll do top row, middle row, and then bottom row across all 4 cards, left to right.
Is this like the order you put the cards down when you're playing the cards?
Yeah, so what will happen is you get 4 cards, but you can choose what order they're in. So you can go, oh, yes, I really like that matchup, but if I put them in that order, I can't match up this symbol that I want to activate. So you've got to make a bit of a decision on how you want them to go. And once you've locked in your own cards, you can just go and start activating them. It's simultaneous play. So you go through, you activate the resources. So basically, the top row is predominantly gaining resources. The middle row will be having abilities that will convert resources into points for the most part. And then the bottom one will have some other effects as well. And once you've all done that, you then spend resources to attract new primates to your group. And you can only attract one at a time. So there's a limit on how many cards you can get. But it has trashing mechanics as well. You can kick other monkeys out of the group. And you get rewards for doing that as well. So you're trying to get rid of those trash cards at the start. But at the same time, all of the upgraded cards you buy in the game are worth 3 points if you actually end up trashing them. And there's 4 different groups of monkeys that you can recruit into your group. And they all have a thing they specialize in. One specializes in gaining points. One's specializing in gaining batteries, which was a special resource you use to activate some extra special powers that are random each game. You've got the gorillas that generate a lot of rage, which is the resource you need to kick monkeys out of your group. And then you've got chimpanzees, which their special abilities, they can copy other abilities of other cards that are laid out in your little tableau that you're forming. And so basically you just go again and again until someone hits 80 points. And I thought at the start, after a couple of rounds, I'm like, oh man, this game's going to take a while because we gained 5 points or something, or 4 points in the first round. But as you start getting those more cards, it ramps up like crazy. Like the last round, I was getting 20 points. Oh. It exponentially goes up as you get rid of dud cards and start chaining up the good ones. But it's really clever. I think there's quite a lot to explore in there, focusing on different monkeys you want to buy and get into your group. The artwork's beautiful. It's Vincent Dutrait.
It looks gorgeous.
It looks really nice.
Did you play this multiplayer, Jules?
Yes, played it at 4 players. It can go up to 6.
Yeah, is there much interaction in the game? Because the playthrough I watched was a solo playthrough, and I was like, this looks like a solo multiplayer fine.
For the most part, yes, it's a solo sort of multiplayer game. There's not really any interactions apart from when you get into the phase where you want to attract new primates to your group. You have bidding tokens, and you have to essentially put out, if I put out the chimpanzee token, I can only recruit chimpanzees. But if I only put out gorillas, I can only take those. So you're indicating what one you're recruiting. But at the top of all of those tokens is a bonus ability you get to activate. But you can also spend 2 resources of the same type to activate one of your neighbor's abilities as well.
Okay, so there is a bit of interaction.
There's a little bit. It's not much, but there were a couple of times in the game I thought, I think they're going to be buying, because the resource cost is different for each monkey. The baboons cost fruit and the gorillas cost grain. So if you see someone stored up a bunch, you're like, all right, I reckon they're going to be buying that one. So if they're going to do that, I'll copy their ability. So I might choose this primate to purchase instead. However, you're not always guaranteed that knowledge because the chimpanzees can be bought with any resource. So there's always that risk that you think, yes, they're going to buy some baboons. Cool. Their special ability on the bidding token is get 2 victory points. And if you're banking on someone doing that, but they end up actually going chimpanzees, then you're like, I can't do that. So little interaction, but it's minimal. It's mostly solo.
I'm not saying that's a negative thing. It's just wanted to make sure that the multiplayer game doesn't play vastly differently. I was surprised by the playthrough I had watched at the time. Can't remember what YouTube channel it was now, but I thought it was very good. The card play, like I said, it's the same that Tainted Grail has for its combat and diplomacy, where you're trying to match symbols between cards. And I think that's a very clever way of combining a deck building aspect of the game, because the symbols you have depend on the cards that you add to your deck. And so the better cards you have, the better symbols you have in your deck.
Yes. With
the ability to be able to generate the resources and the actions that you need. Yeah, I'm very keen for that game. I want to try it.
Do like, when you're putting the cards down, I was looking at the symbols on the cards. Is there like a wrong way to do it where they don't work, or they all match up and work some way? It's just trying to make sure you're playing them in the best best.
Yeah, so that you can't play them wrong. So the way
Yeah.
the card's designed is quite clever. So card abilities on basically the top row is you're just gaining stuff.
Yeah.
So when you match things together and make a closed loop, you might gain 2 fruit or a grain and a fruit. The abilities that have an arrow pointing towards the right is you need to pay this to get this.
Okay.
But because the way they've designed the cards, the arrow to convert into this object is always on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
So you can't make a wrong combination.
That's
There's
cool.
no possible mistakes you can make, which is very cleverly done.
But there are cases where if you use a card that you really want to get that top row or middle row thing, then the bottom row or somewhere else in the card combinations, it doesn't create a closed box.
Yes, that's
right.
right.
So you miss out on those resources, on those conversions.
Yeah.
I thought there was a good decision space in the cards.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's always concessions you have to make. You'll never have a situation where you're like, cool, all these 4 match up perfectly and I activate everything. That never, ever happen in the game.
Yeah.
You've always got to be switching them around and trying to figure out, okay, is this going to net me enough fruit in order to recruit this one, or do I need to go for some batteries? Yeah.
Great stuff. Is it coming to retail, Jules?
Yes, it'll go straight to retail. I don't know exactly when it's coming, but it should be before Christmas, I would say.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a pretty lightweight, but there's enough sort of crunchy decision making in there and satisfying gameplay that was good fun.
I'm definitely interested to try that. That sounds
After
cool.
Us.
Yeah, After Us. Yeah. That's not my sizzling game, but I'll hold that for a bit. I'll let
I'm
Mike.
interested for that as well. I'm waiting for that one. I'm very keen for that. I'll talk about a couple games that I've played. I've played a lot of light stuff lately. I've been a bit busy moving house, but I've managed to get a few games in. One game I was happy to play, at our game day, some friends of mine brought a dexterity game to the game day that I've never seen before.
Oh.
I'm like, what rubbish is this, man? I'm the dexterity guy, and they've never shown me they have this. And I was really like, my little cousin played it and was talking about how much fun it was. It's called Hibachi. It's a game about making like little Japanese dishes. And the way it plays is a central board, and it's got, 9 sort of different ingredients around it on the hibachi grill. And basically what you're doing, you're taking turns flicking from the edge of the board, or like tossing weighted poker chips with holes in the middle at the different ingredients. And as you can imagine, if I flick one of my tokens onto this ingredient, you can flick mine right off it with yours, or try to. And on your chips, they have different values from 1 to 600, so 100, 200, 300, so on and so forth. And how it works, after 3 rounds of flicking, the sort of head player at the time, the head chef, gets to pick which ones get activated first. Now, you don't get whatever ingredient you want. At the start of the round, you pick out 6 ingredient cards at random and put them around the board. So you might really want mushrooms, but if no mushroom cards came out and went next to the mushrooms, if you land on mushrooms, they're doing nothing for you. There have to be cards on those ingredients to be able to take them. And every round, 6 more come out. So they start stacking up towards the end of the game. But it's interesting. It's not quite bidding. How it works, if let's just say we're activating mushrooms and everyone's combined chips on there equal 1,500, anyone with mushrooms at that point can sell their mushrooms for $1,500. So you want people to, if you don't need this ingredient to make a dish, you can bank on everyone else wanting that ingredient, because before you can buy it, everyone has an opportunity to sell it at max value. And then everyone that bid on it has an opportunity to buy it one at a time. You can buy the ingredients. If you played a really high chip, and if I put like a 600 or 300 on there because I was really trying to get to it, I have to pay 900 for it, the added up value, which is really interesting. But it's a fun game of throwing these little chips around. There's a few other sort of areas you can throw onto, which might make you the head chef or might get you an ingredient, because there's 3 recipes on the front of the table that anyone can make. And each recipe needs 3 ingredients to make it. So everyone's trying to rush to make those dishes. Or you can throw your chip onto this other area that gives you a secret recipe that you want to make. Or gives you, if you throw a 400 onto this area, you can pick up 4 cards that are ingredients, pick one to keep, and then discard the rest. There's other things you can do as well. But it was just a fun game of throwing these chips on the board and pushing each other around and yelling at each other for pushing yours.
Sounds frantic.
Yeah, it was frantic. It was silly and crazy, but that's my kind of dexterity game I enjoy.
Oh, yeah.
But that was Hibachi. That was really fun. And I played finally a recent Kickstarter that came in called Shake That City from AEG. And that was a fun game. It's got a weird little gimmick to it that makes it quite interesting. So it's one of those sort of games where if you build a house next to a factory, it gets no points. If you build a factory next to a factory, they get 1 point each. Things like that.
Yep.
But the way it's played out, everyone's board has to be set up exactly the same. And it's hard to explain how that is. There's scoring conditions you put around your board, but you don't... How do I explain it? It's very hard to explain. If I'm set up my board with the scoring conditions on the top left, yours are on your bottom left to look exactly like mine. Does that make sense?
Yep.
We don't look at it the same way. They're all set up the exact same angle. But what happens is you have this little contraption in the middle of the table that every person takes turns using, and it's full of cubes. And you shake up this little contraption and push a button on it, and it drops a row of cubes, like a 3x3 pattern of cubes, and they're all different colors. And the first player gets to choose a color, so I might say red, and then I get to take these little red buildings, which are houses, and put them on my board in that exact configuration without rotating, without doing anything else. I can put them in that configuration. Then everyone else can choose any color but red, and then put them on their boards in that configuration. And you just keep going around like that. So it's just one of those sort of games where you have 3 or 4 different zones on your map, and you're trying to put different buildings onto these zones in certain configurations. There's shops that need roads leading to them. So the further into the board that you build a shop, you have to get more roads in a row leading to the edge of the board to be able to score that shop, and they get worth more points. And roads next to roads are 1 point each, but if the road's not hitting the edge of the board, you get nothing. Little things like that. But it was interesting because you get into a lot of situations once you built a few things on your board that you can't fit any of the shapes on there, or if you can build, you have to build. So for example, I think factories made houses not be able to score. But if the factories are the only shape that fit on your board, you have to build them on there. And it turns out they are getting built next to houses. Bad luck. You have to put them on there. So it's interesting. It's like a 20-minute, half an hour game. But I really enjoyed this little gimmick of putting all the cubes into this little device, shaking it up, punching it, lifting it up, and seeing this nicely laid out 3x3 grid of different colored cubes, and then building them onto your board. It was really interesting. Yeah. Cool. Have you guys seen this game? I'm not sure.
No.
There's a recent Kickstarter that just came in. Me and a few buddies got it, and it was fun. It's like for one of those kind of games, I think a lot of them usually play for an hour, and this one was literally 30 minutes. It's 15 rounds, but the little device does the sort of whole selection for you as to what configurations the shapes are in, and then everyone just can make a pretty quick, easy choice and put them on there. And at the same time, those other point conditions on the edge of the board that I mentioned are like, if you fill up this entire row, you can flip this token over and score 3 points. Or if you get 4 blue in this row, you can score 3 points and flip it over. So there's all these little conditions. So while you're trying to build houses next to parks without factories near them and all that sort of thing, you're also wondering where you want to put those things on your board to try to match those conditions on the edges as well. So there was enough to think about to make it a little bit crunchy for yourself, but not a big brain burner that you're spending 5 minutes trying to make a decision. So yeah, it was quite fun. It was Shake That City. So that was a fun little game. I wouldn't quite call it a party game, just in between party game and a midway kind of game, I'd say.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but fun. But yeah, let's go into some sizzling stuff. Def, what do you got for us, buddy?
I am going to change the game I was going to talk about because I was going to talk about Weather Machine because I was like, it won our best heavy game of the year. If you haven't listened to the Board Game Barbecue Awards, you should go back and listen. And I thought, I haven't spoken about Weather Machine since it was published, but actually I have on the episode that Paul Grogan was on. So if you want to hear about Weather Machine, go back to the episode we had Paul Grogan as a guest a couple of months ago. So instead, I'm going to talk about an even bigger game.
Oh.
So this is a game that I was waiting with. So this is Hoplomachus Victorum. For those that don't know what that is, Hoplomachus is an old game by Chip Theory Games, the company that gave us Too Many Bones, Cloudspire, and Burn Cycle. They had created this, if I'm not mistaken, it's probably their first big game.
Yes.
And they did a massive campaign to, I guess, redesign the whole content they had up to that point.
Yeah, I think they called it Remastered.
Hoplomachus Remastered. And then that wasn't enough, of course, because Chip Theory Games. They created a second game called Hoplomachus Victorum, which is essentially the same rule set, tweaked for a completely separate standalone solo game. I know Mitch has spoken about Hoplomachus Remastered in a couple of episodes ago, so if you want to listen to that, you can go back. But Hoplomachus Victorum is the solo game. I have played a full campaign of this, which took me more than 12 hours.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's not a small game. So the way the game works is you go through 4 acts, and at the end of each act, you have to fight a leader, or they have a special name in the game. I'm trying to remember now. Until the end of Act 4, you have to go to Vesuvius and fight the Zion, which is like the big boss. The way it works is there's 6 or 7 different areas in a small map at the bottom where you have your beat and you travel around, and every spot that you stop to visit has an option, or it has either a combat, like a bloodshed event, they call it, which is basically mean that any of your units that are defeated there, they die, you lose them. Or it could be a sport event, which is the same thing except you don't lose your units. Or it could be God, my mind just went blank. A different type of card which basically gets you some kind of requirement for any future events that happen. So it says, in a future sport event, don't do this or don't do that. And then it gets you a benefit if you manage that. I can't remember the name of the cards now. But so the interesting thing that makes this game really good is that there are 6 or 7 different areas, and each area has its own special arena. So think about, if you've played Too Many Bones or Cloudspire, it's the same situation. You have tactical combat, except in Hoplomachus it is much, much simpler. You don't have the dozen of keywords that you have in Too Many Bones per character. You have one sheet, and those keywords apply to everyone. And the way it works is there's always 2 teams. There's you and the rivals, and first you have to deploy, and then the units that haven't deployed this turn can act, so they can move and attack and stuff. Then the rival goes and they have to deploy a unit, or they can deploy a unit, and there's maximum number of units on the table and all that, and then they have to move and attack with their units and stuff. So there is a massive amount of tactical maneuvering that can happen in this game, because the arenas they're not as chaotic as Cloudspire, but they're not as tiny as the Too Many Bones battle mat.
Okay.
And in the different arenas, so imagine you have some units that maybe have ranged attack, some units that if they're next to another one of their allies, they can inspire them, so they roll better dice and stuff like that. So the abilities are really simple. But what makes the game is that in every area, the arena is completely different and it has its own rule set. So, for example, there is an arena, I think it's the Amazons maybe, that has a chariot in the middle that runs around in the arena, and you can climb on the chariot. The chariot is a chip that runs around. And if it meets any other units, it pushes them out.
Okay.
So you can manipulate the movement to get people close to that so they get pushed, but you can also climb onto the chariot and move with it because it moves 3 spaces and your movement is only 1, or whatever the case may be. And these abilities of the arenas make the game extremely interesting because you jump from one side of the world to the other to take part in these events, and every arena gives you a completely different experience. The events themselves also have a different feel because you have the bloodshed events where you have to kill everybody, as simple as that. But you also have the sporting events, which could be capture the flag type. It could be So there is an actual flag chip that you have to run across and capture it and then go back to your starting position and you win. Or there's King of the Hill events when you have to get your units on a couple of specific spots in the arena, and every turn that you stay there, you gain a point, but they come for you.
Yeah.
I thought the progression of that was very interesting, and the way the game progresses is every time there's chips or there's units that are being lost, they go into a bag, and then you draw from that bag when you are drawing enemy units for an arena that you're fighting, plus the local units for that arena. So the units are local to arenas, and they have special abilities that relate to those arenas. So, for instance, in the central arena in Vesuvius, it has lava everywhere. So all units get 1 damage at the start when the battle starts. But if they're local units, they gain a health point instead of losing it, or something like that.
Yeah.
The local units, when they get defeated, they go back into this common bag. But you can start recruiting units to your team as you progress through the game. So you go, right, a local arena from Vesuvius could be pretty handy because I'm planning on going there and doing this. Or you could say, oh, you know what, I want one of the Amazons because they have ranged attacks and whatever else. The game has a lot more than what I'm describing, but the general premise is that. And at the end of, you do this 4 times and the acts get progressively more difficult. And at the end of Act 4, if you've survived, you fight the Zion, which rolls 1 trillion dice, and it has a whole sheet of abilities that trigger. And the Zions are the best part of the game. And I think that it is also its biggest weakness in terms of, if I try to look at the game and go, is Jules going to like this? Is Jules going to sit down and play through a 12-hour campaign to defeat one big boss? Because you can get the full experience of the whole game in Cloudspire in 3 hours or in 2 hours.
Yes.
In Hoplomachus, you can't. You have to play a full campaign to reach the Zion, because in the meantime, you're fighting all the individual bosses at the end of each act, which is still exciting, but it's not as exciting as fighting the Zion. So
is the purpose of all the arenas that you have to go through to get to the final boss to try and wear you down so you're starting at a weaker position? Or is it the other way in which you need to build up stuff to be able to face it?
It's the other way, because you build your hero. So you have your hero who, if at any point in the game dies, you lose the game.
Okay, yep.
But there are some ways you can save him by spending blessings.
Yep.
And the blessings you gain during the campaign, and you waste them when your hero dies. He will die eventually, and you have to spend blessings to save him. But then when you face the Zion at the end of the game, there's always some funny rule that says the amount of blessings you have gets added as hit points for the Zion, or something like that. So the more you've used, the more powerful the enemy is. But you build up your hero with hit points. You build up your hero with upgrading their dice. So there's 4, I think, dice, if I remember correctly: yellow, blue, green, red, black, and red. Red has 6 faces that hit. So you don't even need to roll it, but it is in the game. And then yellow is, I think, 2 out of 6 is a hit. So when you go through these challenges, you can upgrade your dice, or you can gain a new attack dice, or you can gain a new unit in your team, or you can upgrade your leadership, which allows you to have more units in your team. So you try to build up for the Zion fight. I think that may be a little bit tricky moving forward, and I think it is a bit of a testament that since I played the game, I haven't gone back to play a second campaign yet.
Yep.
So we'll see how I feel when I do that.
Yep.
But I thought my first experience was that the game is absolutely fantastic. If you are into chip theory stuff, there is no way in hell you will not love this.
Okay. So my wallet's not safe.
No, not at all. So yeah, that's Hoplomachus Victorum by Chip Theory Games.
All right, I guess I'll have to keep an eye out for a cheap copy.
I'm waiting to hear what you say, Jules, because I'm very interested. But before you start, Jules, I want to know, have you played both games?
I have not played both.
Oh. Okay. Talk to me.
All right, so what we're referencing here is Archeos Society, and the game that Mike is referring to is Ethnos. So
hang on. So Archeos Society is...
It's a retheming of Ethnos.
Oh, I'm interested in this.
Yes, I'm very interested. But I was hoping you'd played Ethnos.
No, I haven't had a chance to play Ethnos. So me going into this game was totally blind, no expectations. I'll just say that the game was kindly sent to us by VR Distribution. So thank you to the folks over there. But yeah, so let me tell you what Archeos Society is. So Archeos Society is a set collection game. So the game plays over a series of rounds, depending on the number of players. And on your turn, let me step back a little bit from here, actually. You play with 6 different expedition members in the game. So there's multiple decks in the box, but you only play with 6 of them at a time. And I played with the recommended starting 6 just to get a feel for the game. I was able to learn the game straight from the rulebook. It's a very simple, easy to learn game, written rulebook. No issues there whatsoever. So you start the game with 1 card in your hand, and basically you shuffle up this entire deck, and you split the deck in 2, and then you shuffle 3 monkey cards, golden idol monkeys, the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, and you randomly shuffle those into roughly the bottom half of the deck. So you know the first half of the deck is got none of those monkeys, but they're the trigger for the end of the round. So when that deck starts getting lower as people draw more cards, you start to get this tense moment of, do I need to play my cards now before the round ends? Because it's an immediate end as soon as that third is pulled. So you've got this ticking time bomb in the deck. So what you're doing on your turn, you start with a card at the start of a round, and on your turn, you can either grab a card from the display of cards that are face up, or you can go blind off the top of the deck, and that's it. So draw a card. And the other option is play cards. Those are your 2 actions. Now, playing cards, you're trying to collect sets in one of 2 ways. You can either play all of the same character or expedition member, or you can play all cards of the same color, but they can be different expedition members. So, for example, you've got students, there was physicians, there was guides, and each one of those sets have all the colors in them. So you can collect all of the same type or all of the same color to play down. And the bigger the set, the more cards you have, the more points they're worth when you get to the end of a round of scoring. So I think a single card on its own is worth nothing. A set of 2 was 1 point, 3 was 3, and it goes all the way up to 6 plus cards is 12 points, which is quite tricky to do. And what you're doing when you play that set is, particularly if this really applies to when you're playing all of the same color, because you need to have a leader for that set. So the leader is the top card, and whatever leader you choose, what character you choose, each card has an ability. So for example, the leader, so what you're doing is, let's say I play a set of 3 and I put the leader as one of the guides. He's my leader. His power is, what happens is the color you choose, that's the track you'll move up on. So this is lots of tracks that you're trying to progress on to have more points at the end of the game. That's the major point of it. Loads of tracks you're trying to advance up, plus playing sets to get you points. The leader's ability is your requirement to move up on the track is reduced by 1. So on the track, it has these thresholds printed saying if you want to advance from this space to this space, you're going to have to play that color, and it needs to be at least 2 cards in size. You can never advance more than 1 space, but it'll have a little number, 2, 3, and it gets harder and harder the further the track you go up. And you just have to play a set that is that size or higher. But the leader, the leader that is the guide in this case, reduces that requirement by 1. So I could actually play a leader by himself to advance on a threshold that says you need 2 or more cards, because he reduces that. But a card on its own is worth no points as a set. So there's lots of little concessions you need to make. And as you keep going, playing these sets, as I said, you get to the point where the monkeys start coming out, and it's that immediate end. Now, the other little wrinkle I'll share is when you play a set, You put it in front of you, you'll keep it for scoring, but every other card you have in your hand goes out in the display for all the other players to take. You might spend a few turns building up a hand and you go, cool, I've got this mega 6 set that's going to be worth 12 points. But then certainly for me, this happened. I realized, but I only need 2 to advance to the next spot. I don't get to add up all the thresholds and advance 3 spaces. You're only allowed to advance 1 space at a time. So you start to go, that's a little bit of a waste. I've built this big set, but I don't need that many cards to advance. But it's still worth a lot of points. But then I've got all these other cards, and they'll just go out, and I want them as well. So you start to have these agonizing decisions about, I don't want to play this set now because I'm going to lose these cards. It was really good fun. And basically, when the 3 monkeys come out, you do a bunch of scoring. So you score where each of your markers are at on the tracks, and you score each size of set that you played that round. You shuffle them all back, reset the deck, and go again.
Yeah.
And the thing that I found really enjoyable about the game was the powers on the cards. And it created quite an interesting mix of things that you can do. And as I said, there's lots more decks that have different powers in the game I haven't yet to explore. And of course, you can create combinations with those. But I'll shout out to one of them, which was the Physician. The Physician's power was, if you play, for example, a group of 3 and the Physician's your leader, the size of the group determines how many cards you can hold back in your hand. So if you play that at the right moment, you go, cool, I'm going to play this size of 3. It'll advance me up on this track, and I'll get to keep the 3 cards I was holding. I don't have to put them out in the display.
Jules, this sounds like one of these games that this designer, Palomar, is known for, where the rule set is simple and it tricks you into thinking, there's not much into this. And then I know you and I have played Blitzkrieg and what was the other one
Caesar.
that we played? Caesar. And we were both like, actually, these games they're pretty good. There's some good game in them. And it sounds like this is following the same pattern. Do you think that's the case, or is it a bit more?
I think absolutely that is spot on, because there's sort of 2 things I haven't explored. As I said, there's more characters with more abilities. They're a bit more involved. I played the recommended starting ones.
How much variability is there for that in the game?
I think there was still another 6 different abilities in the box.
Okay. In Ethnos, there's 12, and you rotate 6 every time.
Yeah,
and some characters have extra boards and things that come into the game?
Okay, yes, there was. So there's extra tokens to use all over the place, extra boards. So I know there's going to be a lot more involved in those characters, which I'm excited to try. And the other thing is the tracks themselves have 2 sides. There's a basic side and an advanced side. And on the advanced side, it has the thresholds and requirements to move up, but also bonuses. So, for example, we played with one where the threshold was you actually get to draw extra cards after you've discarded the ones you didn't use. There's all these different powers that you can activate if you're using the advanced sides of the board. So I think it's one of those games, once you've got everything turned on, there'd be quite a lot of fun little tricks that you can do to make things work for you.
The tracks are one of the biggest differences to my understanding between Ethnos and this one.
Yep.
And I don't know how I feel about tracks, because Ethnos is more of an area control game.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
Each bigger band lets you put your extra pieces onto the board. So that's been my biggest, not gripe, my biggest concern, or I don't know how I feel about these tracks instead. But then when I hear that you got other sides with different conditions and different abilities, none of the areas on the map give you different abilities. They're just different areas on the map. That concern of mine might actually turn into a bonus, because if the map starts to, if the tracks bring something new to it, that sounds cool too. So I'm really hanging to try this, because I absolutely love Ethnos. It's been a big hit with me and my group lately, because it's a great 6-player game that doesn't take too long and it's easy for everyone to get into. And so I'm really keen to try this.
It's, I will say as well, even with the tracks on the basic side, they're not all the same. They're actually asymmetric. So you have some that the threshold to get over the first line is 1, and then it's 4, and then it goes back to 1, and then back to 4. And it's worth differing points that go up and down as you go. So you're trying to time it that you don't end on a spot on that track that's worth 0, because you want to push to the next one that's worth 10 points. You've even got one track that the first spot you move to, you lose 2 points. So you really want to make sure you get past that point before the golden monkeys come out. So there's, even in the base one, there's a little bit of variability in just how the tracks are laid out, that give a bit of, you have to put a bit of thought into it. It's not, they're all the same and you just move up as much as you can on every one of them.
Is this a 2-player game or is this a 4-player game, Jules?
Yeah, this was something I was going to talk about. I played it 2-player and it was good. But I think it's, if I was to ever play it again, I would never do 2-player because it felt
it's meant to be played at 4.
Yeah, I think it needs to be 4 or more. I think 3 would still be good, but at 2-player, it was just too easy to not get in each other's way. You go, oh, okay, I see you're collecting that, so I'll start doing this instead. I feel like maybe playing with less sets would make the 2-player tighter, but that's not how the game works. I might break it a bit. So I think it's a game that needs to be played with 4 because I can see in a 4-player game or more, you're going to have those moments where you're praying, like, for the love of God, no one take that card. I need that card. And then you have those moments where you'll absolutely be cussing all over the table when people take the card you're looking for. I think it's going to be fantastic. And the funny thing is, someone could take that, hate draft that card, but then they play a set and it flops back out because they didn't use it. So I think it's going to be a really fun game. I'm excited to try all the different powers. It's so easy to learn and get into. I think for someone that has played 7 Wonders, very easy step there. It's that sort of entry level, knocking on the door of mid-weight, but not quite there sort of game. Yeah. So yeah, that's Archeos Society. I really enjoyed that one and excited to see what else I can play with in the box there.
No, very good. We're full of Greek words. They went from ethnos to archeos. So interesting.
I'm looking forward to hearing more from you, Jules. And I want you to try ethnos because I want to hear that comparison. Or I just need to get my hands on this one so I can try it as well. I'm very keen.
I'd be keen to try ethnos after playing this for sure.
For sure. Awesome.
That's right.
My sizzle won't go for too long because it's a legacy game that I just finished with my friends. And the game is My City.
Yes.
I've had my eye on it for a while because I love polyomino games. Those Tetris-y shapes are something that always really interests me. And obviously I can't give too many spoilers. But this was a fantastic little legacy experience. I would go as far to say this could be a fantastic My First Legacy game for non-gamers because it's so simple. The rules seem pretty straightforward. And one of the better things are it plays over, oh goodness, I can't remember how many chapters now. There's 15 chapters or something, but it's 3 games per chapter. And each game went for literally 20 minutes.
Oh, cool.
So we did nights at my place where we played 3 chapters in one night. And then it was nearly literally like a fifth of the whole game. You know what I mean? Like we just played over and over again. And I was worried with playing so many times I'd feel bored of it. But nearly every single time something changed or something new was introduced. So the game just constantly changed to the point it kept you interested. I thought Renata would get bored of it because once again, we're playing the same game over and over again, but she was right into it trying to get all the goals we were working towards and lots of stickers and things get added to the game. But it's a polyomino game where you're building up a city. So there's 3 different color buildings, mainly yellow, blue, and red. And it's just about trying to fill the space. There's trees that you don't want to cover. So you can cover trees, but trees at the end generally give you points. So you don't want to cover up the trees. And then there's stones, and there's 2 stones to a square, and then negative points. So you want to try to cover those. But the game was just kept interesting with the rules continuously changing about how you're going to get points. You're going to score if you do this. You're not going to score if you do this. And once again, I probably can't go into many of them without spoiling it. But it just continuously changed. More things got introduced to the game. Our boards from the start to the end, it's completely different to each other's and completely different to the start of the game. So you're really working on your own little thing. You're fighting for different things. You're racing for different things, trying to be the first people to complete different challenges on multiple levels.
How long does each game last, Mike? Each individual?
20 minutes. 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So you smash out in 20 minutes. So a chapter you get done in about an hour, maybe a bit more because in between you're reading, okay, we have to do this.
Yeah.
One of the things I loved about it, and I don't think this is really a spoiler, it did a really good job of, what's the word I'm looking for? When someone jumps too far ahead, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a phrase.
Runaway leader.
Yeah, it helps with that because I found a lot of the time the person that won got punished a bit. And the person that was last got something good to help them. So I even heard my friends sometimes saying, if the game warned you what was going to happen, they're like, I think I want to try to lose this one because they really wanted the benefit at the end. Because once again, you might have bad things happen to you or bad things added to your board that make future games harder if you won. So it was a really cool balance of saying, okay, I'm getting all these points that are going to help me win the game overall at the end, but I can tell my game's going to become harder and harder as I play if I do really well. So sometimes you might want to just take the loss on purpose if you can work that out, which I found really interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool, but it was a great game. I think it's a great game to play with your kids. I think anyone can get into this. Like, I would actually think about giving this to a family as a gift, saying, hey, here's a cool activity to do with your kids. You don't have to sit there for an hour every time. You can sit there and play as many 20-minute blocks as you like. And the kids are going to get excited because it's all about stickers going all over your board and stuff like that. So I think it's a really good entry point to somebody jumping into a legacy type game because it's non-threatening, really chill, and just lots of fun. And once again, we literally played over and over again. So we played 9 or 10 times in one night at a time.
That's fantastic.
And we loved it. Or, once again, we want to have a go at this game tonight. Let's play 1 or 2 rounds and then let's go into other games. Like, it doesn't have to take game day or gaming night either, which was cool as well. Because one week we were all really busy and couldn't get like a little legacy night going. So they all came to my local game group that I run. We played 1 or 2 rounds and then we went off to play other games as well. So we weren't just sitting in a corner by ourselves. So yeah, My City, I really recommend it as a good experience.
So once you finish the campaign, you're left with a game you can play again, or you have to throw it away?
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, good question. So there's an other side of the board that sort of, I think, matched with everyone. That's the one you keep playing with.
Okay, yep. Would you go back to it?
I would.
Okay.
So my friend said, do you want to keep this? I don't know if I really want to keep it. And I'm like, you know what? This is a 20-minute polyomino game. Like, it's a good way if I want to get a quick game in and get that sort of vibe and I don't necessarily want to play an hour on Planet Unknown or something, I would play it again because I think the other side incorporated a few of the different rules that you came to and from throughout the campaign. Yep. And once again, it now fits in that sort of party game, I think, like a party game polyomino, which I think is kind of cool. I don't think I have much that fits that other than maybe Silver and Gold, which is a roll and write.
Yep.
So it might be a way for me to say, hey, these are the games I really love because I'm a really big polyomino fan. Hey, these are the games I like. Do you want to try this? Because this can lead you into those other games, give you a bit of a feel for them, see if you like it, without having to give them a whole heap of rules that come in some of my favorite ones like Isle of Cats or Planet Unknown, things like that. So I think it's a really good stepping stone if I'm introducing people, which I do quite often, to get into those games. So yeah, I would definitely pull it out again and use the base game side that incorporates a few different rules.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
for sure. Awesome.
That's great.
Those are some great games, folks.
I'm surprised we haven't spoken about this before. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, that Sarah was the first person that
she did talk
played
about
this from our group.
Yeah.
So I think she must have spoken about this, but it must have been ages ago.
Yep. That was a long time.
So it's really good to see it coming back, and you had a good time with it, Mike. It sounds like a kind of game that everybody would.
And a good thing is as well, the guy that taught us, the guy that bought it, had bought it before and played with his partner. So he could he actually replayed the whole campaign, start to finish, and there wasn't any big spoilers for him. Like he didn't win. I think he might have come second or third. So he didn't have that big of an advantage because
that's cool.
The game changes that much. And I don't think it's one of those legacy games that you're going to go down different paths necessarily. It's not like those games that if I replay this, I'm going to find a different storyline.
Yeah,
it's not that kind of legacy. But the way you set up your board will change every time and the decisions that you get and the benefit. Once again, depending how many times and when and where you win or lose, that will change your board a lot as well. So he had a great time playing it through a second time. And
very cool.
He said, honestly, it didn't really give him an advantage. So that was cool too.
Nice.
Like, I would play the legacy of it again. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
If you're looking for a new board game, you need to check out adventgames.com.au. They have a great range of games, including pre-orders and hot new games. Anything you could be looking for will be there at Advent. Dean provides excellent customer service that is second to none, and he's always keen to support the Australian board game community through events, game days, and even through sponsoring a podcast. So head over to adventgames.com.au today. That's adventgames.com.au.
Some announcements and news. We got our Patreon pub quiz coming back at the end of the month on the 20th of July at 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. If you're not a Patreon, you can jump on and join on some of these shenanigans that the guys get up to sometimes. Or if you already are one of our Patreons, come on in. I hear they're a blast. I'm usually busy those nights, so I haven't been to many of them, but the ones that I have jumped into are a lot of fun.
They're just hilarious.
Lots of good fun. And that'll take us on to the question of the pod. So the last question of the pod from last week was, what is your favorite abstract game? So we've got a few answers from some of our Facebook and Discord people. Maybe we'll jump onto them first, and you guys can share some of your favorites. Jules, do you want to read some out?
Sure. I'll start with Shannon Taylor. Said, my favorite abstract strategy game would be Kamisodo. I think I've pronounced that correctly. Says, a very colorful game where the piece you can move is determined by the color of the piece your opponent just moved to. Well, that sounds really interesting. I would love to give that a go. We've got Tegan Smith said, my husband loves abstract, so we play a lot of them. Some honorable mentions would be War Chest, Hive, Onitama, Santorini. But if Samurai is abstract enough, then that is my then my favorite is definitely Samurai. It's a gorgeous design and one of the most played games in my collection. Yeah, that's a strong list of games. And yeah, I have a copy of Samurai as well. The old version, it's very good. Alex Kern said Through the Desert. And Dingo Dan, Calico for some mind-melting crunchiness. Yeah, yep. Calico will do that to you.
Oh, yeah.
And David Joseph said, I guess I'm not allowed to say chess?
I think that counts.
Of course
chess
you
definitely
are.
Counts.
That is the granddaddy, I think, of abstract games.
Yeah.
Jeff, did you want to read some Discord answers?
Sure. Mr. Bodhi says, my favorite abstract game is TAC. Over 1,000 plays. That's impressive. And then Santorini at about 150 plays. Uberface says, I don't play a huge amount of abstract games, but Project L is definitely a standout for me. I can totally see that.
Yep.
Daniel says, Onitama and That Time You Killed Me are both great, but even though it's got the randomness of backbuilding, pushing the boundaries of abstract, I think War Chest is my favorite. And then Stas says, Nova Luna and Onitama are up there, had plenty of fun with Blocus and Kahuna too. But I think my fave is Paris La Cité de la Lumière. There you go, with my French accent.
This was fantastic.
And then Big Nose says, it's pretty tough to get ahead of Go. For me, astoundingly deep strategy for rules that are far simpler than pretty much anything of a board game meetup, and really an incredibly high bar of balanced board game, a multitude of trade-offs that just emerge from the game design without being written into the rules. This is very topical because I was just exploring Go during my trip to Greece. I don't know what gotten into me. I was like, I need to learn how to play Go. This sounds like my kind of game. But it's one of these games where you have to be on the same level as the person you will regularly be playing with. Otherwise, it's not fun for anyone.
Yeah.
So I don't
know. Same
know.
problem as chess. You need to be on the same level.
Same problem as chess, yeah. So what about you, Mike? What's your favorite abstract game?
I think a lot of the ones that the community said, Nova Luna definitely stands up there for me. That Time He Killed Me really stuck out for me. That was such a fun...
I have not played that.
Especially if you like chess, I think you'll really get a kick out of that. But there's heaps there that I've actually wanted to play for a long time. I think I sometimes get confused with what an abstract game really is sometimes. I think it's a bit loose there. But War Chess is something I've not played yet. I've been dying to play. And Onitama is a game that I've not played yet.
Really?
Yeah, it just looks like my kind of thing, and I just haven't got my hands on it yet. So
really so good.
Onitama is great. Great stuff.
Yeah, I was reminded when Mr. Abodi said TAC. I've played TAC. TAC is so good. Great abstract game. I forgot about that one.
Most of these games are one-on-one usually games, and my partner Dimi doesn't like direct conflict, so I never get to play them. So War Chest is one of my favorites. I think if I had to choose one, I think proving the test of time has been something that would decide this, because you can get excited quickly. I got excited about Calico, got excited about Cascadia and all others. I think the one that is still remaining as a standard sort of go-to for abstract is Azul.
Okay.
It's been there, it's gone through other games and hype and stuff, and we always go back to it. The original Azul, I think it's up there for me. But if I had the option, I would definitely want to learn and play Go. And
I was just going to say, we didn't read out. So I'll say thank you again to everyone that's responded to this week's question. There's too many responses to read them all. But one of the things I was quite surprised by is the amount of comments of people saying, I don't really like abstracts. There was so many people saying they don't like them. And a lot of comments as well of, I don't really like them, but if I had to pick one, like this would be the one.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised because we've talked about topics in the past about all kinds of area control games, war games, train games, all different genres. Abstracts seem to be this little one that just really is divisive for a lot of people, which I found quite interesting. I haven't seen that sort of response before. Yeah, I don't know why that is. I suspect the theming is something to do with it because if you listen to last week's episode, I read off a Google definition of what an abstract is, and one of those elements was it typically has a very light to non-existent theme. So a lot of abstracts, it's a pasted on theme, and maybe theme is really important to more than the community than I thought it was.
But would that then mean those same people wouldn't like Euros very much? Because a standard Euro also is usually quite lack of theme.
I agree, yeah.
Guys, can you comment back to us? This won't be the question of the pod, but if you don't like abstracts because of the lack of theme, do you not like Euros because of the lack of theme? Like a typical standard OG Euro. I'd be very interested to get comments on that to see what people think about that. Because I'd be curious.
Anyway, I just thought that was interesting to point out.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah.
Very cool. Let's pause for a moment, guys, because we haven't sorted our new question yet. I'm going to put in edits needed at what time are we? 1:17.
Yep.
1:17.
New question.
What do you reckon the question's going to be? I was thinking along the lines of what's been your experience introducing games to family, or do we reckon we stay away from that? Do you have something else up your sleeves?
We could make it a bit more specific, because that sounds like something that people would see as, I need to respond by writing an essay here.
Yeah.
What if we ask, have you played games with your family, and what was the game that you got?
What game's been the biggest hit with your family?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I like it.
What game's been the biggest hit with your family?
I'll write it out.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great.
All right, we'll get back into it. So for this week's question of the pod, we want to ask our community, what game has been the biggest hit with your family? We want to know what games you've brought out to your family that's really got them involved, especially if they're not usually gamers. And we'd love to hear from you guys as to what that is. What are some of the games that you guys have had big hits with your family?
Yeah, so my partner doesn't play many board games. Occasionally she'll jump in and play. And one of the ones that was a big hit that kind of surprised me, but I brought it out because I was just really excited and enjoying playing it heaps at the time, was Scout.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time I'd played a board game with my extended family that they had, at their own volition, come back and said, can we play that game again? And that had never happened before. They've always
How good is that?
Yeah, they've always had a good time playing games, but they've never asked to come back and say, can we play that one again? That was the first time they'd asked, can we play Scout again? So Scout, to me, is the standout of biggest hit with the family because it was so easy to teach. And to me, that game is addictive, the gameplay. You just want to push your luck a bit, collect a few more cards, and then slap down an unbeatable hand. But yeah, anyway, Scout for me is the one that's been a hit with family.
Fantastic.
Def?
Like I said before, I think with my family in Greece, Azul seemed to be the one they liked the most. But I want to mention a game that my daughter Angie bought on her own, and we have Adrian and MJ over for New Year's Day last year and the year before that. It's becoming a bit of a tradition. And we play Brass Birmingham. That also becomes a bit of a tradition. And after that, Angie said, would you guys be interested in playing a game I've got? And Adrian has mentioned this before. That's quite courageous to do in an adult company for a teenager to come and say, hey, would you guys like to play this little game I have? And we did, and we had an amazing time. And I think that these types of games have something to do with the company that you have and the people that you have around the table, and the amount of fun and the amount of interaction that you have creates these memories. The game is shot in the dark, by the way. It's a simple questions game. It's like a light version of Trivial Pursuit. You have a bunch of cards and you ask questions, and you try to guess. You try to get the closest to the answer. It has some serious questions like how many, if we evenly distribute the people on Earth, how many square meters would each person have and stuff like that. And it has some really bizarre and funny questions, by the way. And so A Shot in the Dark has been a smashing hit and has created some great memories to the point where I think we will try to play this every year on New Year's Day now.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. That's really cool. For me, I think it's been pretty standard stuff. So 6 Nymph has been a big hit with my family.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Illusion and Cockroach Poker. Like just my family are a big lot of stirrers. We like to stir each other up. Cockroach Poker with the lying to each other and stuff was a big hit. So they're the main ones for me that have hit the table. I've got my family playing some other games now, but they were the ones I think I put in first to soften the blow and try to get them a bit more interested. But they worked well for me.
That's great.
But make sure, community, please jump on in and let us know on our Facebook and Discord what games have been a big hit with your family. I'm not sure if that's how I phrased it first, but that's the question. What has been the biggest hit with your family? That's the one.
That's it.
Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing from you guys and reading them out next week. And that will then move us on to Swear and Oath. So this is where we talk about the O's we've made, if we've successfully completed them, and what is next. I'll start us off. I've been going last for most of these. I'll start us off. I had missed out on one of my previous oaths, which was Hair of the Dog, which I have played. Look, it was interesting.
Okay.
It'll go on the sell pile, I think. I don't know.
Right.
I think it was fun for what it was, but for the amount of players we played, I think, 6-player game, and I could tell midway it was starting to fall flat with everyone.
Yeah.
I have a feeling for people who aren't mainly gamers, I think it might hit with your more, I've only played Monopoly crowd. They might find it a new, interesting sort of thing, but the game had Take That in it, but you didn't have to do the Take That. Like, it seemed a bit forced to do it.
Right.
I don't know. The dogs were really cute. It's about a dog-friendly pub and walking around with your drink and trying not to get caught with an empty drink in a dog pub and trying to pet all the dogs. There's different modules you can introduce, but I don't know if it'll make it much better for me personally. It was a fun game. Like, I had fun, but we ended up changing the rules to shorten the game because it was all, okay, we got the experience. I could tell everyone wanted to move on. So that was Hair of the Dog. And the other one that I did complete is Dorfromantik, which is the game that's up for Spiel des Jahres at the moment. I had fun with it. You can play it in a campaign-style mode. I bought it not knowing much about it. It's cooperative. There's no losing in it. It's just a very chill. It's like Carcassonne sort of game without having a lose condition. It's just let's cooperatively build the most beautiful area we can do and try to hit some certain goals that come out during the game as well. I had a few challenges. I'll definitely happily play it again, but it was quite light. I think being up for a spiel, I was expecting something with a bit more bite to it, but it'll be a nice little entry point for some games. Do you know what someone said to me? Someone said, I've had big game days or gone to a convention, and then at the end of the convention, a few of us just wanted to make puzzles together and build puzzles just for something to do together, but we didn't really want to think. And I think this game would have hit that mark for you. If you just want to chill, have a cup of coffee, you had a big night the night before, and you want to do something together in the morning, you can build out this little layout together nice and calmly and not really have much to worry about in it. It was nice, but I would like to play Dorfromantik's campaign mode. There's 5 little boxes in there, almost like a little legacy. that sort of bring a bunch more rules into what it looks like and a new component. So I would definitely like to play that again and try that sort of little campaign mode to it. So I successfully did complete both my oaths. I was looking at my shelves for my new oath, and I've had a game there that's I reckon I've owned for 2 years because I heard a friend really liked it. And it's a Simon game with minis. And I've not played it. I've not played
Simon game with minis that you haven't played.
I know, right?
What is that?
And the game is called The Others.
Oh, yes. So I know about this one.
Yeah, it's a game. It's like all versus one. I think one person plays like one of the 7 deadly sins, and everyone else is sort of trying to take them down. So I looked into it once. I never really finished learning the rules. But I looked at that box. I'm like, I'm on a mission. I want to play all these games I've owned for a long time and haven't gotten around to. So I, Michael Ferrugia, will have played The Others by the time I'm on the podcast next.
Cool. I'm keen to hear about that one.
Take it away, Def. What do you got for us?
So my previous oath included a couple of smaller games. One of those was Acropolis, which I have now played and taught to many people already. Everybody seems to love it. And I haven't met a single person yet that I showed the game and they didn't like it. It's been a fantastic game for us, and the value for money has been fantastic. The second game was Ryan Courtney's new game, Trailblazers. So I had played this actually with Jules. Jules, I don't know if you remember when you visited
we did
Brisbane.
play that, yes.
We did play that. You had your copy of it, but I didn't have my copy yet, so I wanted to play my copy and play with Timmy, so we did that. And yeah, Trailblazers is a great game. I think it will fill that gap between Pipeline and something very light.
Yeah.
It's still thinky, but because of the limited number of rounds, there's only so much you can do, so you don't get that strain on your brain as much as Pipeline. Fantastic game. Mm-hmm. So I think Trailblazers will be a success. Now, in terms of a new oath, this is where it gets tricky because I only have 3 games unplayed in my collection, and one is bigger than the other. I have Frosthaven. I have the Isofarian Guard.
Oh dear.
And a game I found waiting for me when I came back from Greece, which is none other than GMT's Mr. President.
Oh, that's a big one.
I started opening this game today, and I cannot believe how big this game is. I will talk about it in a future episode. It's a solo-only game that's meant to take more than 12 hours to play.
And from what I heard, it has a rule book for how to use the rule books.
It has 11 rule books. I did one of these things where our community enjoys, where I was sitting in front of my screen and yelling at the screens like, what is this? Why is there 12 rule books in this game? And why is there a rule book for how to use the rule books? And what's all this? And who thought this was a good idea to make? The game looks fascinating. So I cannot promise I will play this by the next time I'm on the podcast, but I promise I will play it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe you should swear an oath to read the rule books. So that sounds like
swear an oath to read the rule book.
Yeah,
I will accept that.
There we go.
Like that.
Thank you.
Jules.
All right. So my last oath was to play Archeos Society, which I have done. It was fantastic.
Good stuff.
And my next oath, I think I should have a couple of weeks before I'm on next, but we'll see. There's lots of travel going on at the moment. I haven't gotten my copy of this yet, but I want to play Too Many Bones Unbreakable.
Oh.
So my copy hasn't come yet because I ordered Burn Cycle with it as well. So I think it's one of the more complicated orders.
On the back burner.
Yes. If my copy arrives before the next podcast, I will play that. If it doesn't arrive, I'll just go and steal Mitch's. So I'll find a way to play Too Many Bones Unbreakable by the time I'm on the next podcast.
Sounds fantastic. That's a bunch of successes. That's
it is
awesome. Good to hear.
100% success rate.
Before we finish up, guys, we want to send a big thank you to our Patreon community. Thank you for all your support. A couple Patreon shout outs to Helen, Paul Grogan, Shane RC, and Tina Hansen. Thank you guys for your support. We really do appreciate it. And
thank you very much.
If you want to support this podcast, you can also become a Patreon at patreon.com/boardgamebarbecue. You can sign up to give us some money and get a bunch of exclusive content. We do some exclusive podcasts. We run some events through Discord. There's going to be some stuff happening with our PlayCon happening next year for Patreon. So there's lots of good reasons to get in and help support us. But if you don't want to spend money or you can't afford to, but you do want to support us, there are other ways of doing that as well. Joining in the conversation on Facebook and Discord with our question of the week, giving us a review on the app that you use to listen to our podcasts. Just joining in with us and contributing to the community is always a good way to support us, and we really appreciate it. So thank you to everyone that does, and thank you if you're going to come and join us as well. So thank you all. On that note, though, that's the end of our podcast today. Thank you, lads, for coming and joining me today.
Thank you very much, guys. Always a pleasure talking with you.
That was great. Some really exciting games and some more I want to play.
Absolutely. I'm the same here. I'm very much looking forward to playing some of the games you guys spoke about. I'm even interested in Hoplomachus. It sounds so much fun. Even though I don't play solo a lot, like that, it sounds so juicy. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers. Flipping hell, that was efficient as hell.
There we
Oh,
go.
Michael, let's get there. Let's get to 8.
That was good, guys. Thank you, and
Thanks for joining, man. Thanks for being our
squeezing.
third.